कदम कदम बढ़ाए जा खुशी के गीत गाए जा ये जिंदगी है कौम की तू कौम पे लुटाए जा. So this song, whenever I listen to this song, it gives me goosebumps. I'm one of the fortunate people living in Delhi, and being in Delhi, witnessing the Republic Day parade, and listening to the beating retreat songs, where all the military bands come in and play all the songs, it gives you, instantly that boost of patriotism that you always need. And it's beautiful. Once while I was in school, I get this chance to sing "Eh Mere Watan Ke Logo" on the stage, and the last lines, right? जो शहीद हुए हैं उनकी जरा याद करो कुर्बानी. Whenever we listen to those songs, I still remember, tears started rolling out of the people's eyes. That is, the pride all of us have for the soldiers out there. And it's not everyone's cup of tea. Being a soldier, serving the nation, it's not everyone's cup of tea because it needs the courage, the grit, the determination that not all of us possess. I still remember, Indian Army came to recruit in our college. I cleared the first level, but going for that SSB, I did not have the courage to go for that SSB. So, yeah, it is not everyone's cup of tea. And those who do that are, I think, doing the best service to the nation, which no one else can ever do. So, hi everyone, welcome to yet another episode of Renaissance with Swati. And today I have with me Col Pratyush Singh, who has worked with the Indian Army for 20 years. And right now he's working as the CEO at the Mir Group of Foundations. And I would like to discuss with Pratyush all about Indian Army and his experience. So, hi Pratyush, how are you?
So much, Swati. It's great to be on your podcast and the narrative you gave about the army and the feeling everyone gets. So, before I joined the army, definitely I have been on the other side and I can absolutely relate to those kind of feelings and emotions that are that kind of come within us when we listen to those songs that you talked of. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Pratyush, like you said that, your father was also in Navy, and
Yes.
you are the third generation Fauji in your family. So, how was it being, growing as an army kid?
So, unfortunately for me, I didn't have an absolutely foggy way of life as a kid. I lost my dad when I was 6, but
Okay.
definitely I was born in a foggy setup in Kolaba. My dad was in the Navy, and we were staying in Navy Nagar, and I started my schooling among the other foggy kids, and I studied there till third standard before moving to a more civilian environment after his demise. But it definitely
Okay.
did, in a way, lay foundation for me to naturally opt for armed forces. While I'll not
Mm-hmm.
say that that's been the only reason why I joined armed forces, of course, it did influence me in a great way. But there are a lot of other factors that played around in the subsequent life till I landed up being in an army.
So, I'm not sure if I can ask this question, but
Hmm.
like you said that you lost your father early on,
Hmm.
and you joined the Indian Army. So, were did you have that feeling to give everything to your nation, or I mean, because it's something that you have to go out there in front of the enemy and protect your nation anyhow. Do, did you always fear that? Do you have that fear in you, or it goes away when you are in army?
So, I think fear is a very inherent part of human nature. So, if anyone says, even in the army, that they do not fear anything, I think that's a false statement. What kind of makes soldiers different is that ability to overcome fear. So, of course, every time we go out into any operation which is life-threatening, any activity that may cause peril to the life of us or our soldiers, there'll always be that fear factor which will play. And I think it is good that it is there because it also imposes some kind of caution as military leaders that we need to have to ensure that we accomplish the task, but also at the same time ensure safety of the troops we are leading. So yes, fear has always been part of our life through the army before that and after that. But yes, army did train us to kind of get over it, think beyond it, and think of the larger goals in life and objectives that are assigned to us, and then we carry forward beyond that fear factor.
So did you always dream of becoming, a soldier or a colonel
Yes,
when you
yes.
were in
So
college?
that's what I was mentioning, that while the seed was laid, because as you said, I'm the third generation, so it comes naturally. I've always heard of Forge being talked of in my family, and even as child, my mother would keep talking to me about, okay, this you would have heard, kids are always talked of, but kya banna hai? What would you be when you grow up? So I was always told, you got to be a Forgy, you got to be a Forgy. So that's how I grew up. But there are a lot of funny factors also, like amusing factors, like when we were kids, this series called Fauji, wherein Shah Rukh Khan debuted. That was showcasing on Doordarshan that time, and it
Yeah.
used to fancy me as a kid. Okay, yeah, I want to be something like that. That was very cool and stylish to me as a child. So I won't say it was purely patriotism. I found the charm of uniform also very amusing. And then
Right.
as I was growing up, thankfully my friend circle, my close buddies in the school were all in a way military aspirants. So you may find it
Okay.
amusing that I come from a
Right.
Catholic convent school which had 82 students in my batch who passed out. It's a co-ed school, so out of 82, about
Mm-hmm.
50 odd were boys, and seven of us landed in army. For a Catholic convent, it's a very amusing fact because in that
Right.
year, interestingly, UP Sainik School, Lucknow, which is co-located in my hometown, had lesser number
Mm-hmm.
of selections in my school. So
Okay.
that was the
Okay.
environment I grew up in. I think that also
Wow.
kind of contributed. So that's how I landed up in army.
Wow. That's wonderful. So, all that charm of the uniform, when you actually entered the army, was that
Yeah.
charm still remained for the
Oh,
20 years that you were?
absolutely, absolutely. So another interesting fact I must share here is that when I was in 12th, I cleared the exam for National Defense Academy, but there were certain issues. I cleared everything, so I cleared the written, medical, and interview, everything, got into the merit also, but there were certain other factors because of which I did not join the National Defense Academy. So I cleared for the 93rd course of NDA, and then
Mm-hmm.
uh, I had to wait another 3 years to actually fulfill the dream of entering the academy. So I applied for CDS when I was in the third year of graduation, cleared the Officers Training Academy exams through CDS, and then the third exam for Indian Military Academy. So I went through three selection processes, clearing them all.
Wow.
Been in two academies, trained in OTA for 5 months, and then moved to the Indian Military Academy because I had that option of moving for a permanent commission, and I definitely would have preferred a permanent commission. So that charm always remained. Like I was always in touch with the preparatory part of it through my first 3, 4 years, then
Mm-hmm.
in one academy, then moving to the second academy, then of course the military academy life. So it's a very different world altogether. It never lets you lose the charm of uniform.
Would you like to share more about how that world is? The military
Oh,
academies.
that's in a single word I could say. In our times, they were in the Indian Military Academy. Now, of course, there are women joining the NDA, and they'll subsequently be landing up in the military academy in Dehradun also.
Mm-hmm.
But in our times, it used to be all boys' academy. So I'll call it the first time I landed up there. It was being with brothers from other mothers. So. That bond has
Yeah,
always remained,
family. Yeah.
1.5 years of sharing physical agony, sharing mental comfort with finding rather mental comfort with each other, going through the say grueling routine of the academy, doing nasty things together, bunking academy routines, running out on weekend offs when we were not given off officially, and
Mm-hmm.
that's another funny part of it. Like we always say, Faujis are very disciplined, but we always find
Yeah.
that uh, that I think the risk-taking ability comes from the fact that we do these funny things in the academic days, taking a little less risk, and if we get caught, we take punishments for that. but all that combined kind of created a bond which still continues while we may not be in touch with each other. The word Postmates, as we call it in Army, irrespective of any academy, rather armed forces, even people from
Mm-hmm.
Navy, Air Force, they'll all
Mm-hmm.
relate to it.
Mm-hmm.
This term Postmate is much more stronger than having a brother. It's like you would always know, even if you're not in touch, just by the fact that X person had trained with you in the academy in the same time when you were there. And you reach out to this person for anything under the sun, and I
Mm-hmm.
can guarantee that you'll never hear a no from a coursemate. That's the confidence we have in our
Okay.
brotherhood. So that's how military
Wow.
life has been in the academy.
Wow. So, like you mentioned that when you joined, there were no women in the academies, and only used to be men,
Yeah, so
and now
it
the
used
women
to
have
be.
started coming in.
Yeah, so earlier when I joined the OTA, Officers Training Academy, the short service was, of course, still open to the women in our country. But
Mm-hmm.
now the things have changed, and thankfully it's changed for good. And women are now in the National Defense Academy, moving to the Indian Military Academy, and subsequently would be getting the permanent commission directly from the academy, which is an amazing thing to happen. A very welcome change.
Wow. Nice. So, life of a soldier is not easy, right? You are always on that, always out there, staying away from your family. How difficult that is.
So that's a call that one has to take. Of course, it's not an easy life. It's I'll not say it's physically tough. It's mentally more challenging to say. It's a life of comparative isolation compared to the civilian life. You see, we serve at locations which are not so well connected in terms of road or rail
Hmm.
infrastructure.
Hmm.
We are posted in locations which are not so well connected in terms of communication per se. I've served in locations wherein I may not have spoken to my family for about 3, 4 months at a stretch because there were no mobile phones, there were no internets,
Hmm. Hmm.
and
Hmm. Hmm.
that's where the isolation plays a say a negative role in a soldier's life, and that's where actually our mental setup plays a major role in keeping us strong. And as military officer, our roles that way becomes more. Say more larger in the way that you are not just responsible for countering that kind of isolation for yourself, but also responsible for the troops you are leading. So if you, depending on what role you are in, you may have from 30 to maybe 1,000 men under you, and they're all your responsibility. You've got to keep them engaged. You've got to have a pulse of what a person may be going through, each and individual in your unit or a battalion or a platoon or a company. You should be aware of every thing that's happening in their life and keep them focused on the job and still keep them assured of the thing that their family, while they are not in touch, are still being taken care of.
Yeah, and I think it's difficult. Even, leading a battalion, I think it is difficult, right, to keep everyone motivated in those isolated scenarios in the difficult positions. So
Definitely.
yeah, so
So
you had that
I'll
inherent skill in you to keep
I think
them
we can again in a way army kind of prepares its own officers to gradually learn to handle these situations. You know, when an officer joins, he's what 21 to 23, 24 years of age, raw out of academy or college,
Mhm.
coming from the comforts of the family, then protective environment of the academy. While academy is a grueling life, but it's still a protective space. You see, it's a confined space of several hundred acres where you're staying, your instructors are taking
Mhm.
care of you. But then you're
Mhm.
suddenly thrown into open to the challenges of leading men. And these are men you've never known, you've never heard
Right,
of
right,
before you
right.
landed up between them. And they definitely are not from the same kind of academic or social background. There's a difference between the social background our officers come
Mhm.
from and the troops come from. Generally, rural and urban scenarios also play up.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that's where the military so beautifully organized. You see, the officers grooming. Like I can talk of the regiment I was commissioned into. So I was commissioned
Mm-hmm.
into Garhwal Rifles. Our troops
Okay.
come from the
Mm-hmm.
Garhwal region of Uttarakhand, primarily the
Mm-hmm.
five districts
Mm-hmm.
of Garhwal, and they are very simple troops. Generally not exposed to the modern lifestyle. You see, hills anyway are protected areas, so
Right.
these people do
Right.
not live in cities and all. So when I landed
Right.
up there, the funny things I was told, okay, uh, none of our troops would know when they joined the battalion, they would never know how to even ride a bicycle. So that
Oh,
that simple
okay.
people, they were always been
Okay.
walking and climbing the mountain. And
Yeah. Right. Right.
so, to understand them, what my regiment follows and continues to follow is when an officer is newly commissioned, we don't live with officers. So, first 3 months or 90 days, as we call it, as a probation,
Mm.
we are made to live with the troops in their own barracks, do exactly what the troops are doing, eat what the troops are eating, perform the duties like sentry duties, even the grass cutting and those kind of things
Okay.
alongside them.
Okay.
So we live like what our troops do, using the same washrooms, using the same utensils, everything that you can imagine from morning till night. We do that through the 90 days cycle, trying to understand their way of life, as also it gives us time to interact with each one of our troops in person in those 90 days. And that's how kind of it establishes a connect also. It develops an understanding of these troops in the officers. And another thing that differentiates armies here, the leadership also has to be earned. While you may pass out from a military academy with
Mm-hmm.
whatever rank you get commissioned into,
Mm-hmm.
it does not imply that you are a leader. You are an officer, but to become a leader, you need to establish yourself and earn that
Right.
position as a leader
Right.
among your troops. So,
Right.
uh, while doing everything you're doing as a troop, while living with them, you still have to do your leadership things. Also, you've got to show that you are worth the salt of being called a leader. You've got to prove
You
yourself
have to
better
earn
than
it.
them. Yeah, you
Right.
have to earn it. You've got to prove yourself better than them, be it say discipline, be it physical fitness, be it say things of wisdom that you talk to them. You
Mm-hmm.
give somebody a financial advice. It should make
Mm-hmm.
sound impact on his life. Then only he'll think, okay, साहब को कुछ आता है. Otherwise, it's like
हाँ.
he's come,
Right.
but
हाँ.
he knows nothing. So
Right.
it
मतलब हाँ,
plays an
आपको
every.
लोग क्यों फॉलो करेंगे
Yeah.
मतलब.
So it's not
Yeah.
just about military things. You see, you're talking with a troop, and I got commissioned when I was 22. When my people who I was staying with in the troops line, a Havaldar was like in his 40s, and he's junior to me in rank. But uh, in my hierarchy, I'm senior, and he'll come to me, he's, sir, X and Y
Right.
thing has happened at my family. What should I do now? And he's talking of something very personal that may have happened
Mm-hmm.
between him and his
Mm-hmm.
wife, or something,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of conflict between him and
Mm-hmm.
his child, a career thing
Mm-hmm.
which his child is looking at. And at 23 years or 22 years of age,
Right. Right.
not having seen any such thing myself, I had to apply
Right.
my wisdom and logic and give him something to act upon, because they would actually act on what I'd say. And it had
Oh,
to be that much more
okay.
deliberate and make an impact. And
Wow.
if it made an impact, it earned me that respect. Okay, साहब को कुछ आता है, साहब ने ये बोला and मेरी लाइफ में ये अच्छा हुआ. So it's not just professional things, it's a all encompassing thing that you impact in
तो ये
troops.
सब आपको इंट्रिंसिकली था व्हेन यू
I
आर
think so.
और
I
आर दे
think so.
टॉट. हाँ.
No, so that's where I think when you talked of SSB, so SSB is a 5-day process, and I think
Mm-hmm.
I haven't been on the other side. I've not been a selector in the SSB, but I think yes, when they do examine the candidates on
Mm-hmm.
their worthiness for being officers in the armed forces,
Mm-hmm.
I think they do examine for these kind of emotional quotient as well as besides the
Okay.
IQ.
Okay.
So I think yeah, that's part of the selection process in some way. Because I've generally seen
Okay.
officers doing all this
Okay.
intersectional. They've never been trained on these things.
So, like you mentioned, discipline, like you mentioned that, even you used to bunk the days during your
Hmm.
academy days,
Yeah.
and then the discipline or the physical hard work, those comes into picture.
Hmm.
So, so all those physical trainings that you go through, how does that impact you as a person, right? All those discipline, all those, because I, not being in army, I have the freedom to do what I want to do.
Hmm.
I will not have a discipline imposed, but you have a discipline that is imposed in you. So how
Hmm.
does that feel day in and day out?
So, if you talk of the military academy, you see, anyone who's joining the academies, be it the India or the IMA or the Naval Academy or the Air Force Academy, it's always somebody who's fresh out of school or college, somebody who's had a very free life, somebody who's had things
Hmm.
at disposal, somebody who could reach out to parents or friends for anything.
Hmm.
And
Right.
to make such an individual, while of course he's been selected or she's been selected, basis the qualities the person would have displayed during the SSB and has been assessed to be fit for the organization, but still he's not groomed to be part of the organization as such. So that's where it plays an important role to start laying boundaries for these people or these raw cadets who just joined the academy to start understanding what the military is all about. And it's not just about imposing discipline, it's about them understanding why is a particular thing required. It's not about anything being imposed. It's about understanding the necessity of a particular thing. You see, now, as simple a thing as wearing uniforms. Now, in a military academy, from morning till evening, we change from 3 to 6 odd uniforms. Like morning physical activities in a different uniform. We go to a
Okay.
classroom, it's in a very
Okay.
different uniform. You go to
Mm-hmm.
for evening games, it's in a different attire altogether. Then the dinner is in
Mm-hmm.
formals, and then you're sleeping in your formalized, or I won't say formal, but a formalized night attire. Okay, this is what you are supposed to
Mm-hmm.
sleep in. While at home you
Mm-hmm.
could sleep in anything like that.
Right.
So
Right. Right.
it in a way establishes uh, identity for the group of people. You see, ultimately, we'll be working as a battalion or a company or a platoon. So, for us to identify with others we are working with, there has to be some kind of common, visible identity. And that's what uniform establishes as the first thing. And it's part of the discipline. Okay, you can't wear what you're not supposed to wear for a particular thing. Similarly, respect for time. It's a very in if we still talk of military operations, you see X thing which has to happen at a given particular
Mm-hmm.
time. If it is delayed, may actually cause risk to life. You see, like say a search operation which has to start before the daybreak. Generally, these
Mm-hmm.
things are done in dark so that you can reach the target undetected. If you are late in starting it, you may reach the target in a broad daylight, wherein you become the target yourself. So unless we start respecting time right from the academy days, unless we start doing our things within those confines of time, the ultimate thing I'm trying to come to is that for anything that is imposed, there's a logic behind it, and that is
Of
what the
course.
military academy tries to tell us, that this you've got to do,
Nice.
but also because this is required for such and such reason, not just because you've been told and
Right.
like blindly follow it.
Right.
And another interesting factor about academy, which I think not many people cover, is we have often talked of military ragging, as they call it, that the seniors
Okay.
are the trouble for the juniors. They'll wake you up at odd times. They'll make you do funny physical things, like say things you may not even hear of in civilian environment. But and it's also said that ragging is wrong in a way. We don't even call it ragging in
Mm-hmm.
Forge. Military Academy, the
Okay.
casual term we use for it is okay, aaj ragda parade hai. So what ragda
Acha.
is primary, not just physical. The larger aim of that is, and I think it needs to be understood, is that it breaks the false ego of a person. You see, you've come from an
Okay.
environment where
Okay.
you are not used to hearing harsh things. You are not used to taking orders. Army is a very hierarchical organization. For all the while that you will serve in uniform, there'll always be somebody who will be junior to you. There'll always be somebody senior to you.
Mm-hmm.
While
Mm-hmm.
while there's a pattern of working, but there's a respect for hierarchy that everyone has to have. And that respect for hierarchy is not just because of rank, because that person has served longer, has experienced things which we
Mm-hmm.
have not as yet.
Right.
And whatever he or she would
Mm-hmm.
talk would be with the wisdom of that experience. So it's always good to listen to that
Mm.
person. But we are not inherently groomed to respect this. And with this ragada that seniors give,
Right.
waking you up, making you do
Right.
wrong things. In a way, they are making you learn that
Mm.
they're
Right.
training your mind to receive orders, analyze orders, do what you order to do, because that's how military would ultimately work. You see, there's a soldier who has to be
Right.
in say top of
Right.
Kargil. You want to climb say 3,000 meters, which is a stupid thing to do in a normal scenario. Why would somebody go climb 3,000 meter to be
Right.
shot dead? Ultimately, you know you are heading
Mm.
sure death, but people have done that, right? People have climbed up, they've fought, they've
Right.
died
Right.
on an order given by somebody who was senior to them. So logically, that order shouldn't have been followed by any sane human, but it was followed because mind has to be groomed to receive and follow certain orders, which in such scenarios would be needed. And that's what the ragda of the military academies does.
That's what my next question was, is there any room for being vulnerable while you are in military? Because, we all talk about mental health these days,
Hmm.
that some people are vulnerable, some are not. All of us are vulnerable at certain stages of life. So is there any room to be vulnerable in military?
Absolutely. If we are all humans, so at some point, everyone has again, it's my belief that everyone has a level of competence, everyone has a level of tolerance, everyone has a
Mm-hmm.
critical point beyond which the person would ultimately break. It may differ from X
Mm-hmm.
person, it may differ from Y person, but yes,
Mm-hmm.
we are all humans and all soldiers understand this factor. So it's not that
Okay.
we consider anyone who is
Mm-hmm.
vulnerable, who gives up or
Mm-hmm.
breaks at a particular point.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there's a reason to look
Mm-hmm.
down on such person or even ridicule that person. It's probably a time when this such person would need some kind of counseling or motivation to get back to life and track again,
Right.
right? Because ultimately
Right.
he or she is a trained soldier. He has been picked up by SSB or even by the
Right.
regimental training
Right.
centers for a reason or a quality that person has had. It's just
Right.
about
Right.
giving them that kind of confidence they'll
Right.
again be taken care of. So yes, there are people, there are situations we are all vulnerable to.
So, like you mentioned that, one of your, suppose your boss says that you have to, climb up the Kargil and just to be
Mhm.
shot down. So, have you faced such situations in your tenure?
Oh, several times right from the academy days. So just before I moved out of the officers training academy, a week before that, I was to leave on 22nd of July 1999. I even remember 22nd of January 1999, sorry. And I remember the date because that day my senior, uh, probably he wasn't very happy with me deciding to move to the Indian Military Academy. He wanted me to just stay in OT and continue my training there and finish it
Okay.
from there.
Okay.
So he took me to the physical training ground and told me to climb up a 17 feet rope. So I climbed it
Okay.
once, came down. He said, climb again, climb again, climb again. And I did it, I remember about 17 or 18 times. And ultimately, my arm strength started giving up. And I fell from the top of the rope, fractured my ankle, landed up in Indian Military Academy with a fractured ankle. So yes, I have been told to do such things, and I have done those things because yes, he is my senior. He is doing telling me something to do, and as long as I can do it, I would rather do it. Uh,
Right.
so that was my first exposure to that. Okay, now
Right.
talk of real operations. Several a time. So let me look at which would be an interesting incident to talk of in many such scenarios. So again, I was in a location in J&K. It's close to Udhampur. I'll not exactly name the location, but uh, we had a confirmed input that there were two terrorists who were likely to visit a particular person's house for it was I think Eid next day, and generally since the tourists are not in access to festivities, they generally visit affluent people in villages for such festivities. And we got input that okay, on Eid occasion, so and so is coming, but since we don't want to raise an alarm and since it's a festival, we wouldn't want a larger team of troops to go. So there were just three of us who were selected. Okay, uh, you've got to be in that house. So imagine three people in a stranger's house waiting for two sure shot people who are armed to come in.
Mm.
So it's a very
Mm.
vulnerable situation wherein I am surrounded by five strangers of a family, of a community which is generally having affiliations with the terrorist, and I am sitting in their home. So it is not very clear whether I am the target or they are the target. I am targeting the terrorist or I am sitting duck there and I will get targeted. But the operation went well, but we take those risks. I went there along with my two colleagues and we did what we were supposed to do and we came out alive. But
So how does
initially,
that courage comes in, you know? Or how do you surpass that fear of death, maybe?
I would have no specific answer to that, but for my particular case, I can tell you, as I said, not having fear is a lie one would have. So I have in every such situation always had that thing that uh,
Mm.
it's a stupid thing to do. Why should I do it? I always had that thought. But then the larger things are okay, I belong to a regiment which is a very, say, established regiment of the Indian Army. There's a name it has earned. I have been given the privilege to be part of that regiment. It's my honor that they've accepted me as part of them. And as part of that
Wow.
regiment, I am given an operation. The interesting trust in me. Now, that's a conflict. Whether I let down my troops, my organization, my regiment, and my country, or whether I protect myself. And I think
Right.
for any sensible, dedicated, and devoted soldier, the option would be okay, my life is too small compared to the three factors: my regiment, my
Right.
nation, my organization. And I think when we do that comparison, generally, better sense prevails and we go out for that operation that we are required to do. As
That's
we
why I
say in
mentioned in the
Forge.
beginning, right? Yeah, that it's not everyone cups of tea. मतलब हर कोई फौजी नहीं बन सकता.
Yeah, so in army we go by three things. You see, you would hear these three words being mentioned by almost every soldier you talk to. So there are three things: naam, namak, and nishan. So naam is the
अच्छा.
regiment's name, the
अच्छा.
army's
Okay.
name, the country's name. It's not your name. It's
Hmm.
the
Hmm.
regiment, the
Hmm.
emblem you have on your beret.
Hmm.
That's the naam.
Hmm.
Namak is a common thing. You see, namak harami nahi kar sakta.
Hmm.
I have been brought up in this country. I've been accepted by an
Hmm.
organization, given a leadership role in an organization. How can I
Hmm.
betray them? And
Hmm.
Nishan is the emblem I talked of. So you can't actually let anything happen to the emblem or a tricolor for that matter. That's also a Nishan
Hmm.
for us. It's a symbol.
Okay.
Nothing can
Okay.
happen to these three. We are insignificant when it comes to Nama, Namak, or Nishan. Any soldier would
Wow.
give up anything for these three things.
Wow. So 20 years in army. I mean, how was that tenure now that you're out of army? 20
Oh,
years when you look back, how does that
so
feel?
I would always be grateful to the armed forces. 20 years, it made me go through experiences which normally I would take 100 years outside army to go through. I've been to almost every part of the country, which I think on an average, normally people will not get that privilege to go to. I've served in five different organizations. Again, it's a very unique thing for a 20-year-old soldier in the armed forces. So I served in the regular army in my regiment, Garhwal Rifles. I got posted to Rashtriya Rifles. I was posted to the National Security Guards. I got the privilege to serve in Africa and the UN peacekeeping forces. And then I commanded an Assam Rifle battalion. So these are all very
Okay.
different people, different setups,
Mm-hmm.
giving a different kind of
Mm-hmm.
exposure to me. And
Mm-hmm.
I continue to
Right.
use the exposure in my current role or the roles that I've been doing outside the
Right.
army. So I'll
Right.
always be
Right.
thankful to the process. It's always going to be part of me.
Yeah, you can take a man out of military, but you cannot take military out of a man, right?
Absolutely, absolutely not possible.
So when you finally, after 20 years, you moved out of military, then
Hmm.
you joined a corporate, then how did it make you feel? That made you feel, did you lose some part of yourself as in joining a corporate as compared to a military? How does that feel, the transition
Oh,
feel?
so on the contrary, I think I carried a bit of military to every organization I went, so I didn't lose any part of the military in me except for probably the glamour of uniform that I have always had while I was in the uh,
Mm,
army. So it feels very different. The moment you wake up, you freshen up and put on that
right.
uniform, I think there's a switch that goes on. I always felt every morning whenever I wore my uniform, there was a different kind of feel the moment I buttoned in my uniform and
Okay.
stepped out. So that's the only
Yeah.
thing I miss. But when I moved to Morgan Stanley, I think the values of military I did carry along with me. So how to take care of my team, how to be progressive in our thought process, how to be open to changes. Like as I told you, I served in 5 different organizations, so I was changing myself
Right.
every few
Mm,
years. So these kind of things
right.
kind of helped me in uh, bringing some value to the role I was given in my corporate firm in Morgan Stanley, where I worked for about two
Mm-hmm.
and a half years. I think I would love to believe that I made some significant contributions there in my 2.5 years. I continue
Wow.
to be in touch with my team there. I established an absolutely new team
Mm-hmm.
there.
Wow.
Migrated some process from US to India, and that was a new
Mm-hmm.
learning for me as well as the entire team that I established there. And we continue to be in touch, and they voluntarily are in touch with me. So I feel there
Wow.
would be something good I've done.
No, yeah, I mean, like you said, discipline, like you said, team building, all these
Hmm.
things that you'd already done in army, you're implementing the same.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're
So
bringing in
another
all those
another thing I
ethics.
would
Yeah.
like to highlight here is, and that's a perception that needs to change actually. And I'm not talking of why should military veterans be accepted in corporate, but I'm talking of something very different. We see army
Mm,
as everyone I talk to generally has a perception that all that soldiers or army officers do is stand on guard and border or fight terrorists, and that's all about them. They view armed forces only as an element of combat. And I would like to change that perception. We should look at it as an organization, as an industry. Also, you see, Army is a 14 lakh strong organization, which is absolutely self-sustaining. We don't outsource a single thing. I worked in Morgan Stanley
mm,
and there were processes outsourced to firms like TCS or
right,
eClerx. But armed forces
right,
do not do
right.
that. We don't outsource some other people to go and do our operations for us. So you see, we have operations, we do our logistics, we maintain all our equipment, our fleet of vehicles, our rations, our uniforms, our identities, our cyber
Mm-hmm.
security. You look at anything that an organization
Everything
does,
on your own.
everything is being managed within the armed forces by the troops and officers of the organization. So you see, it's an all-encompassing
Right,
organization, and when
right.
people talk to soldiers, they should talk to them with that perspective that these people, we have our own financial setup, we have our own account
Mm-hmm.
setup, we make our own
Mm-hmm.
procurement. So
Mm-hmm.
there's exposure in
Mm-hmm.
procurement, there's exposure in
Mm-hmm.
say finance, there's exposure in budgeting, there's exposure in logistic, there's exposure in manufacturing. We are manufacturing our own weapons, we are manufacturing our own vehicles. So there's hardly anything that armed forces isn't
Right,
doing in-house. And that's how I think that's a
right,
perception we need, which needs to change. That it's not just standing guard.
right.
We are not just security people. We are not just on sentry duty. We are a way a lot beyond that, and I think that's a perception.
Holistic,
Yeah, very
complete
holistic.
holistic, very
Absolutely.
holistic that, yeah,
Yeah.
everything you can do, you have the power to do everything that you want to
Yes.
do.
Yes.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's really wonderful. So now that you are in your current role, you mentioned, right, when you were the Kaldan in
Hmm.
Jammu and Kashmir, right? You used to go to army schools and you used to teach the
So
kids over
see,
there.
no, so and as a colonel, I commanded an Assam Rifle battalion, and as I said, it's an all-encompassing role. So Assam Rifles is under Home Ministry. Incidentally, it's not does not part of the Ministry of Defense. It was a deputation posting,
Okay,
and
okay,
uh, in the location I was, besides of course my military operations and leadership roles, I was uh, fortunate enough to be part of a lot of academic activities and youth activities also. I was working with several NGOs there on countless activities. I think it will take a lot of time to name them, but I did get my exposure towards the uh,
mm-hmm.
student and youth side of
Mm-hmm.
life, that
Mm-hmm.
appointment. And then I moved to Jammu in my last resignation of military service, and therein my role was as the director of welfare and discipline, and education is part of welfare and armed forces. So I was managing six army public schools as a director in Jammu. So I
Okay,
wasn't visiting; I
okay,
was actually managing them as a administrative capacity as a director, wherein I was
wow.
primarily looking at the recruitment and administration and finance part of it, but definitely was in close contact with the school administration and staff and the principal. So, and incidentally, COVID
Mm-hmm.
took place at that point of time. So that entire transition from offline to on-site mode took
Mm-hmm.
place while I was
Mm-hmm.
in a chair, and
Right,
that was
right,
a very
right,
learning
right,
experience. And when I move to my current role, I am leveraging on those kind of experience that I built upon in those two
right.
capacities in armed forces.
So when you see all these young children out there, all in the schools,
Hmm.
in coming with all the military inside you, and coming with all the vast experiences that you have, how do you pass on to those little kids,
So,
managing all these?
so I try not to talk to them as a military leader. It's
Okay,
something I think may come out as very intimidating for young minds. So what I try to be with them, and I've learned that in my 4 years now, is to be more like a uh, say elderly friend they can have. I keep talking to
okay,
them individually or as groups on various aspects. You see, uh, since thankfully now I've served in army, then in corporate,
mm,
and then in a private
mm-hmm.
sector now. So my exposure is slightly widened, and I can advise them on
Right,
lot of career aspects, not just military
right,
but otherwise also. And then
right.
I've been into sports in my school days, so I talk to them on how they can leverage sports in
Right,
building their personalities. I talk to them on communication skills. I talk to them on presentation skills. A lot of things I try and pass
right,
on gradually and one by
right.
one, individually as well as collectively whenever I get that opportunity.
Nice. So you mentioned that you're working as a CEO at this me group of institutions, right?
Yes, yes.
So how does it feel, the transition from military to a corporate and now as a CEO at a group of institutions? How does that feel?
So, military to corporate was, I won't say a major change, except for, as I mentioned, the change of uniform. That's the only thing I
Mm-hmm.
miss. Morgan Stanley is a massive organization and very formalized and open
Mm-hmm.
work culture. I enjoyed working there, and the best change, and it's a funny thing I always quote. In army, we don't get that much time off, and when I first time landed in Morgan Stanley and was told, okay, Saturday, Sunday is an off. I was like, okay, what are we supposed to do with those 48 hours? Like, it's something I've never had. So that was my
Right.
first and funny reaction. I actually made a mention to my manager. We, on Friday, the executive director was like, okay, see you on Monday. I was like, what am I supposed to do on Saturday and Sunday? The gentleman laughed and said, okay, whatever you feel like. But it was a good exposure there. However,
Right.
what I was missing probably was that the team sizes in corporates is very small, and I somehow felt that I could influence larger number of people through my
Mm-hmm.
experience instead of
Mm-hmm.
limiting myself to a
Mm-hmm.
small size of team and
Mm-hmm.
impacting say
Mm-hmm.
small function. And that's where when this
Mm,
opportunity came in, wherein the group has two schools and a college and got about 5,000 plus students. I thought it
mm,
would be better if I leverage my experience and knowledge in such role instead of continuing to be in Morgan
that's wonderful.
Stanley.
Yeah.
And that's why I made the switch. And I think it's been a good experience in past 8 months, interacting with
So,
staff, trying to innovate things, trying to add new things, new offerings in our three institutes, trying to improve what we can offer to the students, trying to, of course, also bring in new business through new offerings wherein we get new enrollments. So the group grows. We are looking at expansion and trying to establish a new school altogether for the group. So a lot of
wow.
things happening, a lot of things to look forward to.
So, like you said, like in military, it's a big organization. You not outsource. So maybe in your group of organizations or schools and
Hmm.
colleges that you're handling, you do. You are making or building people or students to do everything on their own and not,
Yeah, so
look outside.
you absolutely hit the nail on its head. So a lot of functions which the schools and the groups were in the group, we were outsourcing, and I'm gradually trying to insource because not because just I have a fancy idea for insourcing, because I have realized after a lot of analysis that financially too, it makes more sense for us to have a lot of functions which we are as of now outsourcing and paying a lot of money to vendors. By having those functions in, we save a lot of money, and then we have the resources at disposal to do things the way we want to get it done. So yes, I'm working on
Wow.
that too.
That's wonderful. It's really wonderful. So if I would like to ask you that, now that you're out of army for the last 4 years, do you miss the
Mhm.
army life? Do you still
Oh,
miss the army life?
I would love to get back, but they require me. I again, on a serious note, my uniforms. I still keep one ready in my hometown, Lucknow, in my cupboard,
Wow.
and one in my wardrobe and indoors. So there's a set of uniform always ready. While I'm not on reserve list, unfortunately, the colonels when they take PMR are not on the reserve list. It's only up to the lieutenant colonels. But I consider myself a reserve. I'll always be available for the organization when they need me.
Wow. That's wonderful. So, any key takeaways for people out there, who want to, any key takeaways for people who want to join army and in general to all the youngsters out there who are freshly graduating or who want to step
So,
into the
so
life?
first thing I tell everyone now that I speak to a lot of youngsters here in school and colleges also, I think the first thing we need to know the key aspects of your career. Every individual need to decide what are the key areas. When I say career, it is not always a job. You see, there are a lot of things involved in a career, and I can name a few. Uh, One, of course, remains the financial factor. What are your financial aspirations? Be clear on that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What kind of industry you want to work into. Unless you are keen on, say, financial sector or manufacturing sector or supply chain management or defense, you
Mm-hmm.
were always wanting to be in finance and you land up in manufacturing sector. 3 years down the line, you will start feeling the pinch. You will start feeling the need for change, and then you will have to start afresh with a 3 year loss. You see, so make wise choices when it comes to kind of industry, kind of location you want to work into. Some people love the metro life. Some people are okay being in a tier two city. Some people prefer, okay, a slow life is better. Some people like to be close to nature. You need to consider a lot of such factors. What kind of social life you want, what kind of family life you want. So career is
Right.
not just about one thing. There are multiple factors you need to consider, and then probably pick up something which is checking at least 80% of these boxes, if not all. 100% would be the best. And same advice I would give to people who are military aspirants also. See, military has a particular thing to offer in terms of financial life, in terms of social security, in
Mm-hmm.
terms of family
Right.
life. So, does this match what you are looking for as a career? If it does not, don't just come because of your patriotism. Don't come just because of the charm of the uniform, because it will gradually fade away because of the other factors which are not being satisfied. And then you will remain in an organization disgruntled for whatever is the time you serve. And that is not a desirable thing for an organization like Army, because here Everything you do as an
Right.
officer will influence at least 100 people you are commanding. You see 100 lives getting impacted because of a wrong
Of
choice you
course.
made. So make a
So,
sincere choice. That's what I would
so
advise.
yeah, so like now you're working with children, with
Hmm.
students. So do you think the students have those capabilities to make the right judgment at that point of time? Because sometimes we
Yeah.
regret, later point of time that we
No.
should have
So
done something else.
So I think the current generation is better informed than we were. In our times, they have access to so much of information. And thankfully now parents also communicate with children. In our times, I remember even to talk to my mom for a particular thing, I would have to gather some courage. Okay, I want to do this. Now the children are not so restricted in terms of having a free conversation with their parents. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, they I think are comparatively well aware, and it is on us as say elders, parents, teachers, friends, elder siblings, for us to guide them and give them right inputs. We don't need to guide them actually; we
Right.
just need to give
Right.
them right inputs and kind of channelize their thoughts into choosing the right career. They should choose it themselves, but we can always add inputs and
Nice.
channelize. And they are well aware. Yes,
Yeah, I think we should give them the freedom to choose. We should
yes,
give
yes,
them the inputs and give them the freedom to choose them.
absolutely, absolutely.
Right. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. And what is your final key takeaway for everyone who's listening to this podcast,
Final key takeaway that's a big thing to ask for. I think we can all just be good Indians, good citizens, good global citizens. Do things we are supposed to do in whichever social life, professional life, whatever community we are part of. Do what we are supposed to do ethically, do the right thing, and do it on right time, do it the right way, do it with right people. Even if you do something wrong, uh, please identify what wrong you've done, correct it, notify it so that corrective measures can be taken. Don't wait for people to mount and catch you for that. I think self discipline, self work, and right thing is what I'll tell everyone or urge upon everyone to do. That's what I do.
Nice, nice. That's really wonderful advice. That's a wonderful advice. Thanks, Colonel Pratyush, for being on my podcast. So, my just last one request. So, being in army for the last 20
Mhm.
years, you served the nation. So, what is your fondest song, a patriotic song that you would like to share? Is there any
Fond
favorite?
Fondest of patriotic song. Okay. So while as a child, the one you mentioned, the Lata Mangeshkar's song, Mere Watan Ke Logo used to be my favorite. And you mentioned that people cry listening to the last stanza. And I remember uh, there's an incident which is very popular that when she sang it, even the then Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru was crying. But in the current times, I find this song "Teri Mitti Mein Mil Jawa" is it's got a very patriotic feel to it. It's got a music that actually kind of drills through the mind and heart. So that's my
Would you
favorite
like to
as of
sing two lines for me?
oh, I am a
Would you
very,
like to
very
sing two lines?
I'm a very, very bad singer, so I don't know if that's a good idea. But let me even try and recollect the songs. I'll sing my favorite stanza from it. I'll try and hum
Sure,
that.
sure.
है मेरी जमी अफसोस नहीं जो तेरे लिए सौ दर्द सहे महफूज रहे तेरी आन सता जान मेरी है रहे न रहे थैंक यू
Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I can sense, how emotional you are right now, even listening to these lines. Thank you. I think all the soldiers out there, whatever they are doing, it is not it is the greatest determination and greatest service to the country, which many of us will never be able to do. And I think I am so proud of you and everyone who's serving the nation, who's joining the army, working with the army. And I just my head goes up with respect for every time I see a soldier out there. I'm military men out there. My head immediately goes up with respect. Thank you so much, Colonel Pratyush,
Thank you,
for
Swati, and
being
thank
on
you
my
for supporting
podcast.
all our soldiers. Thank you for supporting the Indian Armed Forces. Thank you on their behalf.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.